From the ages of 16 to 38, I was drunk 2 to 4 times per week, every week of my life. Scientists define chronic alcohol consumption as at least 15 drinks per week, and by this definition, I was a chronic alcohol drinker for the majority of my adult life. But a year and a half ago, I quit alcohol completely, and I could not have imagined how much my life would change. Last year, I posted a video after I had gone almost 6 months without drinking. Over 2 million people watched that video, and dozens told me that it inspired them to quit drinking themselves. But I was still relatively early in my sobriety when I made that video. Neuroscientists say that it can take up to a year for a chronic drinker's brain to fully recover. Today, I have gone more than 500 days without a drink, and the continuing changes that I have felt this past year have been nothing short of profound. This video is about the non-obvious long-term benefits of not drinking, the second and third order effects that happen in your life. Yes, you lose weight, you sleep better, you make fewer bad decisions. That is all obvious. But what happens in year 2, year 3? What happens to your friendships, your relationships, your social life? You might actually be surprised. When I was 16, I was diagnosed with severe ADHD. People with ADHD are hypodopaminergic. Can't believe I said that right. Which basically means that they struggle to experience the same amount of reward and satisfaction from positive experiences as other people. As a result, people with ADHD tend to compulsively seek out intense and stimulating activities such as sex, drugs, gambling, and YouTube videos. For me, nothing scratched my brain's itch quite like alcohol. On the one hand, alcohol is highly dopaminergic, giving someone with ADHD a surge of stimulation, heightening energy and awareness. On the other hand, as someone who suffered from a lot of social anxiety, it quelled my nerves around others, especially women. It was a perfect cocktail, pun totally intended, to my novelty seeking. It was, in itself, novel and stimulating, and it put me into contexts and environments that were also novel and stimulating. When I quit drinking, the biggest struggle that I went through was actually boredom. It felt like everything in my life had the volume knob turned way down. People at parties weren't nearly as interesting as they used to be. Dinners didn't taste as good. Trips weren't as exciting. And family holidays, man, they went from uncomfortable to excruciating. This sucked.
Fuck, I miss drinking.
But I stuck with it, and I slowly realized that what I experienced while drinking wasn't actually fun. It was excitement. And while fun and excitement often happen together, they are two completely different experiences. And that difference is key. Because I realized I didn't actually like the people at those parties. It was exciting to be with the people there, but that's different. I eventually had to accept the harsh truth. If you don't enjoy someone or something sober, then you don't actually like that person or that thing. That was difficult to swallow. That much of my social life, my friendships, my hobbies, had been this kind of lie. They were a dopamine-driven, alcohol-fueled mirage. That I had constructed this boozy persona that had been driving most of my social life for decades. And the real Mark, well, I didn't actually know who that real Mark was. When you stop drinking, your life becomes way less exciting. There's a lot of boredom and maybe some insecurity that you're not doing enough interesting things. But if you stick with that feeling long enough, you start to find out what you actually truly enjoy. And when you focus on those things, there is a quiet satisfaction that takes over. And you actually end up in this weird but constant state of dull but happy. Aristotle wrote that you are what you do repeatedly, and by that definition, I was a drunk. Quitting alcohol has completely reshaped my definition of pleasure, enjoyment, and fun. As a result, my daily and weekly behaviors have changed dramatically. I socialize a fraction of the amount that I used to. I've discovered that I'm far more introverted than I ever thought, and I rarely have a desire to travel or go to events anymore. Instead, I spend far more time doing simple things like exercising, reading, hanging out in nature, pouring expensive alcohol down the drain. Because I no longer crave constant novelty and stimulation, it's actually been much easier to be consistent with my actions. I've developed habits in this past year that I've always wanted, but I've never been able to manage throughout my life. Exercise habits that I struggled to create for years have suddenly fallen into place, and my food choices are far more conscious and less compulsive than they were before. I don't have these maddening cravings for junk food in the middle of the night, and I certainly don't have to deal with the drunk munchies. My brain no longer gets hijacked the way it used to, so my preferences and values have changed, which means what I do every single day has changed, which means, by Aristotle's definition, I am a different person. And here's where shit gets really crazy. My whole life, I was a commitment phobe. Forget a girlfriend, I could barely commit to a single job, a single city, hell, even a single place to live. Throughout my 20s, I was a nomad, living all over the world, dating dozens of women, and launching new websites more often than I changed my socks. So I went to therapy for it. Dug into my childhood traumas, read dozens of books, studied attachment theory, meditated for a couple thousand hours, and yeah, that all helped. Helped a lot. I did all that stuff, but here's what I never considered before. Maybe I didn't commit to things because it wasn't satisfying. And it wasn't satisfying because I was on this dopamine roller coaster. When I was a kid, it was video games and sports. When I was an adolescent, it was parties and drugs. And when I was a young man, it was sex and alcohol. My entire life, I always associated fun with spontaneity, unpredictability, and excitement. I enjoyed taking risks. I craved adrenaline and flow. Every day had to be different from the last. The truth is, novelty and excitement is a cheap substitute for intimacy and happiness. So if you don't have much intimacy and happiness, you can always fill the void with novelty pretty easily. Today, I'm in this weird place where I don't see the point of doing something that doesn't involve commitment. This is a polar fucking opposite to my old self. When you are able to derive pleasure from commitment, you start seeking commitment. Sometimes it's just that simple. So what do you get when you combine tons of extra free time, more clarity and focus, and a stronger commitment to building things in your life that are going to last long term? You get the biggest fucking productivity boost imaginable. Look, I've tried all the hacks. I've done the morning routines. I did the sauna and cold plunge shit. I tried every productivity system under the sun. No system, no book, no hack can beat a highly functioning metabolism, a great night of sleep, and a genuine excitement to work on something over the long term. Nothing, not even close. And I know you probably hate hearing that, but it's actually great news because all of that shit is available to you right now. You don't need to learn anything. You don't need to buy anything. If I could go back 10 years, I would just shake myself and I'd be like, what are you doing? A sober life is paradoxical. My life is boring. I do the same thing almost every day, yet I can honestly say that this is the most fun I've had in my career in the last 10 years. I see fewer people and I do fewer things than ever, yet I'm more content and satisfied than ever. And look, I'll be honest, it is weird to realize that half of the stuff you did for fun since you were 16 actually isn't very fun. I'm still working through that identity crisis. Maybe I'll take up crocheting or bass fishing or something, but I'm not worried about it. I'm sure I'm gonna figure it out. Because unlike before, I'm actually patient about my future. I don't mind being bored. I don't mind the lack of excitement. In fact, these days, I actually kind of enjoy it.